Welcome to Midpoint, OCC's midweek podcast aimed at helping you connect with last week's message and prepare you for next week's sermon. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to Midpoint, your midweek connection to Orchards Community Church. I'm Wesley, the children's pastor here, and last weekend, Pastor James, who is with me here
in the room, as usual, picked up on our reading through Acts in Acts 12, 1 through 25. The sermon was named Perspective.
Yes.
And continues us through the DNA series. Actually, I believe finalizes the DNA series.
Last week in the DNA series.
Yeah. Kind of asking, what are you made of? Mm-hmm. So, all right. Well, since you're in the room with us and we're talking about Acts 12, what kind of led you to go through the message the way you did this week?
Yeah, it's a sobering passage when you start reading it because of all the death in there. And I really did start out with the whole pardon idea and Peter getting a pardon. And I didn't end up spending a lot of time there because it would have taken a long time to introduce here's what I'm trying to arrive at. And so I just went with the goofy riddle about the pardon letter. Peter didn't get a pardon from a governor. He got a pardon from God. He got out of this because that was God's plan. So I think it was just a neat, this is one of my favorite kinds of passages where you can just read a couple verses. I kind of almost went verse by verse. You just read a verse and go, okay, here's what happened. And then you read a verse and you go, here's what happened. I love teaching the Bible that way. And this really lent itself to that. But then I had more outline points than I typically do. but yeah, that's kind of where I went. And really that's after I try to outline the passage, that's what stuck out to me. Hey, at the beginning of this, things look really bad for Peter. And at the end, things look great for Peter. At the beginning of this, things look really good for Herod. At the end of this passage, Herod's dead. So that's a total change of perspective. And again, that's God's big picture view. He knows things. So when we don't know him, we recognize, oh, he's got this and I don't.
Yeah. And it's a longer passage too. So to get through a longer passage.
Yeah, to work through that way. So anyway, I ended up liking where it landed, but yeah, it was a little different viewpoint for us.
Yeah.
And I had to come up with our words, but that wasn't so hard.
Yeah. Do you typically try to do 3-point stuff? I mean, that stood out to me as unique.
No, I don't like to be kind of pigeonholed. It has to be this way or that way. I sat under a guy for years, best teacher I've ever had the opportunity to know, and he was really big on that. Like he always had to have, and it didn't truly matter if it was 3 points or 5 points or whatever, but he was huge on the alliteration. Every different outline point had to start with the same letter. And I get that, and I do understand from a learning perspective, alliteration's really good. I don't anticipate people are walking out and going to remember all 6 of the points, whether I start them with the same letter or not. Mm-hmm. So I'm not a slave to that. But when I started with this one, the first 3 were R's real easy. And I went, oh, I wonder what I can do. And the last one, the result was, it was really only the 4th or the 5th and 6th point. And I was like, I bet I can get there.
Was there really 6 R's?
There were 6 R's, yeah. Oh. See, you listen.
I only wrote down 3. I listened to it twice, too.
Well, now I feel bad. All my alliterative efforts went to waste.
Yeah, it was fun, though. It's fun. I mean, that is a common teaching style.
Yes, and he was really good about it. And I will never forget, the first sermon I ever preached at that church, I stood up and I said, and I have an outline, and there's 26 points that all begin with the letter Q, which I thought was so funny. And this guy, the teaching pastor, was there and laughed his head off, and nobody else laughed.
It's still worth it.
Just to get Dan to laugh was worth it. I thought that was really, really good. He thought it was very funny.
Yeah.
Nobody else saw the comedy in it.
It is every single keyword in the dictionary. There can only be 26 of them.
I did reuse quality 14 times. Yeah, no. That was just fun. So anyway, but that's where we landed, the perspective. And if you missed an R or 2, it's okay.
Yeah, or 3, apparently. I just got so into it, I guess. I should have grabbed an outline. I'm sure, are they all on the outline?
They're all on the outline.
I should have grabbed an outline. That's what I should have did. Marissa put so much work into those.
Now I'm going to feel bad. She thinks you don't read the staff meeting minutes or the outline. And you're the best at reading the meeting minutes. I'm not going to throw you under the bus.
I do skim them. I do skim them. So I do miss some of our jokes in there. And there's some good ones. Today's staff notes, she misspelled me and Brenton's name. I'm pretty sure every time.
On purpose?
On purpose, yeah. And
I haven't read them yet. So.
yeah, there's many variations. Well, we actually do have a lot of questions from the congregation today, which is exciting.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah. I think that's a new record.
It's a brand new record.
Yes. So we'll get into some of those. But first, you posed a question in the sermon and specifically said we'd address it during midpoint. So let's start there.
I had my own question because I couldn't land the plane in the time constraints of the sermon. But in the text, it says Peter has a guardian angel. It doesn't say he has a guardian angel. It says he has his own angel. It was his angel. And that is really unique to me. And so I read several commentaries, the ones that I really, really appreciate from guys who I think are solid theologians. And it's like they didn't want to touch it. They just kind of left it alone. And then I read on the interwebs, which always gets you in trouble. And there was just some stuff like, oh, yeah, everybody's got a guardian angel. And then, oh, that's ridiculous. And people and angels don't have these, And so I really, I didn't know where I was going to land, in the sermon. I know where I land personally, is I do believe that people have guardian angels. I 100% believe God loves people enough that he kind of sends somebody there to run interference for you every now and again. I think the bigger issue is, why don't we listen? Because there are probably several times when your guardian angel might mimic the Holy Spirit and man, you shouldn't do that. And we're just like, la, 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 la.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so in that, I kind of like the idea of having a guardian angel. And I had a really wild experience one time, where we were traveling and lost and a detour came up and we had no idea where to go. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, there was just a guy standing at our window. And this was 30 years ago. So this, probably anytime somebody just all of a sudden standing at your window kind of shocks you. But this dude was just standing there and he was like, rolled your window down. And I was like, I don't know. And I rolled my window down. And he's like, hey, if you just go up here and turn right and go a quarter of a mile and he directed us back on the interstate and past all this stuff. And I was like, man, that sounds great, and so we start to move, traffic starts to move a little bit, and I turn around to look back and see if he's telling the cars behind us, and there's nobody there. I'm like, just nobody. And I'm like, well, that was really weird.
Yeah.
And it saved us literally hours because the traffic had been backed up. And so in that, you have that thing, was God looking out for me? Do I have a guardian angel in that? I wish that I would pay more attention sometimes to things like that, but I truly do believe, and I don't see any theology or anything in Scripture that would say, oh gosh, that'd be horrible or that'd be satanic or whatever. We could, ascribe glory again to something that, where God's supposed to get the glory. I guess that's the only way we could try and mess it up, if we elevate the guardian angel above the fact that, hey, God sent him to help you out. But I just think it's neat. And more than anything, I just love to hear other people's stories on it, because that's the thing to me. I don't think it's a salvation theology issue that we have to worry about. I just take the text literally, like I do most of the time when I am having a hard time landing the plane. And it says in there, it was Peter's angel. So I'm like, he's got one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So when I initially hear that, I would, if somebody told me that, I would think they were telling me they were dead. This is Peter, but it's the dead form of Peter. I think there is some, would be there's nothing that I can think of scripturally that would say when we die we turn into angels. That they're very separate things.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that these humans, when they hear that Peter's outside, no, he's not. Yeah.
No, that's an interesting spin on it, and I didn't see that whatsoever. But and again, some of that is more, we get that in movies. We get this in this image.
I also have done zero research.
I'm just telling you where it hit me. But no, that's just a different take on it. But again, that's kind of the deal. And so I don't know, because all of this in the context of the passage would put us in what it was like in the prayer meeting, where literally the thing they were praying for was for Peter to be rescued, be delivered. And so the idea that, well, he's already dead, well, that wouldn't have even happened. They knew even if he was not going to be delivered, because it was the last night of the feast, and so he wouldn't be brought out to the people yet. At least you would assume they would know that. So I don't know. But that, to me, again, that's just fun, because there's no way we could have done this in the confines of the sermon. And that's why I love midpoint. You get to go, well, I don't know. What about this?
Yeah. Paul's angel was busy.
Yeah. If we've got one, some of them are working overtime. Yeah. Let's just go there right now.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll try to revisit that when we start walking through Paul's ministry.
Yeah. That's a good idea. To be continued, if we remember.
Somebody just fill it out on a form. We'll get it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. So, next question. I know the Lord told Peter directly how he was going to die.
Yeah.
And how do we know God's will beyond a shadow of a doubt?
Yeah.
Looking at this situation, it was implied that Peter knew.
Yeah.
And so he had peace in the jail because he knew that wasn't his time.
Yeah. With that, and again, you and I had a brief discussion about that yesterday, which I really appreciated. Not only the question, but then your insight into it. You know, that's great if Peter doesn't think, well, gosh, I know I'm not going to die physically here right now because I'm not old, because it's not by crucifixion. But isn't that a lot of weight to carry for the rest of your life going, but I know when I'm going to die and I know how I'm going to die. And that is weird. I mean, that's the next level of thinking through what it's like to be Peter in that regard. And I don't think it's, trite or trying to make a pass of it. For Peter, for the other disciples, they spent 3 years walking with Jesus, and he was trying to prepare them, literally, it seems like, as we look at Scripture every day, to go, hey, I'm dying. I'm going to the cross. You guys are supposed to follow me. That could mean to the cross. Like, if you guys are really all in, this could be grisly for you. And so we don't get that exact, I'm paraphrasing there. But that, I think, is the notion that they finally grasped. And the only reason you can say that is because those guys were, I started to say a bad word again. Sometimes words come into my head. Those guys were cowards. I was going to say another word. Those guys were cowards as they were following Jesus. They never boldly stepped up. He dies. He's resurrected. They see him. They literally experience him at the resurrection. Says some doubted, but we would have doubted, I think. This whole thing's incredible. And then what did they do? The guys who turned their back, the guys who ran, Peter, who literally denied even knowing Jesus there at the crucifixion. Now these guys are so boldly preaching the gospel, they're getting thrown in jail. I think they're ready to die right then. And that's pretty amazing. And again, this is part of the apologetic defense. If you can give a reason for the hope that you have, if you can explain why you believe, these guys were willing to die for it. Well, people don't die for a lie. Like if you're lying about something, then all of a sudden it's like, well, tell the truth or I'm going to shoot you. We're like, well, okay, I think I'll tell the truth. These guys went to the cross. They went to beheadings. They went to grisly deaths because they're like, no, we're standing up for this thing. We're ready to die. So I don't know. Again, this is now me just speculating. Does that make it easier for Peter to walk through life? Because when it comes, he's like, no, I knew this is where it was going. Well, we all know we're going to die. We just don't have expiration dates printed on us. So in that, what's the great old country song? Live like you were dying. If you really stopped to think about every day. I was reading a book by a friend of mine that I was thinking about maybe us using for our staff meeting times. And, he was talking about just the difference in our perspective of a grocery store trip. If we tell our wives we're walking out the door and I'm going to be back in 15 minutes, we know it's not going to be 15 minutes to go to the grocery store. It's going to take longer than that. But we go and we're rushed and we're hurried and we might see somebody there that we didn't have an opportunity to check in or pray with, but we won't because, whereas just a simple difference, we walk out the door and go, yeah, it's probably going to be 45 minutes an hour. How much does that change? Well, now if I see a guy, I do have time to talk to him. Now, if I see an opportunity to bless somebody, I can bless them, And so in that, it changes because we're thinking, well, what if this is the last time I'm ever going to walk out of the door to go to the grocery store? Wouldn't I kiss my wife on the, wouldn't I tell my kids I love them? Are we doing things every day like this could be our last day? And I don't want to be morbid or macabre in that, but I mean, that's a reality. We don't know. There's a video that made the rounds on social media a while back. I can't remember, and it was hypothetical or certainly fictitious, and like you plugged a card in something or you stuck your finger in something and it pricked your finger and you got a drop of blood and it would spit out this card that would tell you how you're going to die. I don't know if you saw this one or not. And so like, somebody does the thing and they go through it reminded me of the Zoltan speaks from the big, deal. And so you get this card and it says skydiving. And like the person will go, great, well, I won't go skydiving, And they turn around and walk away from the machine and a skydiver's parachute fails and falls on them and they die, And so truly that is how they died, skydiving, but it wasn't them skydiving, And then the next person comes up to the machine and they do the whole thing and they stick their finger in there and they get the card and it says you'll die of old age. And it's a young person. They're like, oh, that's fantastic. And they turn around and walk away from the machine and an old guy driving runs through a red light and crushes him, kills him. And so we don't get what God is up to. It's a goofy video to get to that spot. God's sovereign in all those things. He's in control of all those things. So sometimes we think we know and we don't truly know. But I say all that to say Peter's perspective on that was, I walked with the Lord and I trust him. And so, yes, and of course, remember famously, and Josephus makes a big deal out of this, when Peter went to die, he's like, I'm not even worthy to die like Jesus, so crucify me upside down. I always think, well, gosh, that's a good heart from Peter, and that's humility and understanding, But the reality is the thing in crucifixion that killed you was the weight on your rib cage, and you basically suffocated to death. So Peter bought himself an easier death and a quicker death. But I truly do believe it was because he didn't want to die like Jesus, because he was not worthy to be like Jesus.
And then, probably didn't want people to think that he was Jesus, too.
Exactly. Yeah. So in that's kind of a neat deal. But no, it's such a nuanced question. How do you have peace in something like that? I think all the peace comes from knowing God's in control and I'm not. That's super, super easy to say talking into this microphone. It's very, very hard to do.
Yeah. And I mean, there was another question that came in that just was kind of the same thing about that. Most of us, I think, if we knew how we were going to die, would be fixated on it.
Yeah.
And even then, I think there's some nuances of old age. Like, I think old age was less clear then than it is now.
That was well worded. That was a nice way to put that.
Yeah. So I mean, it had to be on one's mind. I think of even in that, just kind of to show Peter's trust, though. You think of Abraham and Sarah, and I don't know that they ever doubted. I mean, I guess they did.
They probably did.
But it was always like, this child's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like there's always that part, even to the point they took it into their own hands.
Yeah. Well, and goodness, that could get us a long way from where we are here. But that is kind of the deal.
That's, I think, how most of us would be.
Well, but like I say, the problem there becomes, I think we want to help God along in a lot of things. Oh, I'm sure this is the best thing for me, God. I'm sure this is what you want for me, but I don't quite like the timing. So how about I kick-start it? And we get that, and that's where we sometimes find ourselves wildly out of God's will, because so much, this life is really not only about the final destination. It's about the journey and the things you learn along the way. And this is why I think Scripture is so clear about this. The Lord's word is a lamp for your feet, a light for your path. And you think about how that process works. Like if I know you love to hike and go out and learn about trees and stuff. And you hold the lantern out, and you can't see a mile down the road. You can't see the end of the path. All you can see is the next 10 feet. You see the next 3 steps you take. So you take those 3 steps, trusting the light is showing you where, and then you can see the next 3 steps. That's how life is. I mean, like, there's just no way. And I think the reason it is like that, and this is part of my gate, illustration from the sermon. Like if the gate was locked or unlocked from far, far away, we make our decision based on that, as opposed to saying there's 500 steps I need to take before I get to the gate. And so that's plenty of time for, if God wants that gate open, plenty of time. I'm going to do the things that I'm supposed to do along the way. And this is the reason we can't see big picture, because sometimes if we're confident we see what big picture is, we'd try to run to it and we'd miss all the stuff we're supposed to pick up along the way. That's really probably the best theology of trials in our lives. But nobody likes it, because nobody likes the trials. I don't like it. I get that. Yeah, those are neat questions. Those are fun questions to start walking down that path.
And Peter probably didn't want to speed up his death. He probably didn't want to take that into his own hands.
No. I would imagine that was not on his mind.
A little different. Yeah. I remember a long time ago, we actually went to, when I was younger, we used to go on trips over spring break, and we went over to see Mount St. Helens. And ironically, I have never seen Mount St. Helens. And we were there for a week, and it was so foggy.
You never got to see
it. We were even on the lookout at the base of Mount St. Helens. You couldn't see it. So I have never seen Mount St. Helens. I've seen pictures of it, and I've been there, and I've stood on the
still
base,
not seen it.
The base of Mount St. Helens, and not seen it. But we went to see these. They were like lava tubes, I guess. I don't know that much about geology, but these big tunnels that I guess were formed because of the flows of Mount St. Helens. And we went into these tunnels, and the rocks were dark in there, and the cave was really dark. But I've never been in a place like that where like you could have a very powerful flashlight and the darkness just consumed it, but it always worked right in front of you.
Yeah.
You know, like it was always like you could always see your next step.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't show very far in the future. And it was kind of an interesting thing because it was so like the tunnel wasn't super long, but like when you're in there, you have no concept of how far you've gone.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
it was kind of a
wild.
neat thing. But I mean, in that, speaking to the journey, like I remember it, you know,
Still.
and I mean, truly, we saw nothing. We saw the ground. You know?
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
You know, but it was a cool thing. Yeah. It was a cool thing for sure. And
That's the picture, I think.
yeah. And that was unique. That's the darkest, just like actual light, lack of light, darkness I've ever experienced. It's kind of amazing.
Helps you grasp the illustration, though.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I remember because they would do these tours, and which we weren't a part of the tour, but everybody had to have a flashlight because they couldn't light a big enough space even for each individual person. Everybody had to take their own path through. It's kind of neat. Also really kind of eerie at the same time. I also remember that.
kind of spooking me out.
Yeah. Luckily it wasn't very long, and I guess if your flashlight failed, you'd probably sit down and somebody would come, in the next 12 hours. Probably.
My. Story just took a dark turn, folks. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, it was an interesting thing. All right, so shifting gears here. I'm staying on the topic of death, though. So let's keep that thing
Lots
going.
of it in this passage.
Yeah, should we count them out like we did in the sermon? This is the 6th. Is there other possibilities of Herod's death by worms?
Yeah. And again, they're really, my best understanding is there are really probably only 2 possibilities, but that's where you start questioning the order in the way they're presented, because Luke writes Herod was eaten by worms and then he breathed his last. And so there's probably a 50-50 chance, maybe a really good fighting chance, that that's how he died. He could have had a tapeworm. He could have had a parasite. He had something like that. And like literally, and again, I just didn't have time to walk all the way down this path. Like that would show God's sovereignty in 2 ways. God could have planted a tapeworm or something in Herod a year before, knowing that it would, cause his intestines to erupt at that time, at that exact moment, because God's sovereign. Or God could have put the tapeworm in him right then and just said, we'll speed the whole process up. Boom, So that easily could have been. And because of the order, some theologians, some commentators really liked that. That's how Herod died. I don't know that it matters so much. The thing that I liked, or the thing at least that struck me the most out of the context, was Herod's loving how they said, oh, he's a god, not a man. And then he gets buried just like a dude. He gets buried underground, which we do. And then once we're gone, we don't need these bodies anymore. And they literally decompose and they get eaten by worms. And so I liked that take on it more. But both those possibilities are certainly, either one of them could be right, And the reality is, even if the first one's right, the second one's still right. Because if he died by a tapeworm, he's still going to get eaten by worms in the ground. So, but there are more possibilities. I thought that was a neat question. And again, we normally ask what stuff you left out of the sermon. I left that out, and then somebody immediately came up to me afterward and said, I got a question for Midpoint.
Yeah. I mean, there's some fun symbolism that you can think of in both of those that, I mean, I don't think it changes, a whole lot. But either
Herod's
way,
still dead at the end.
And either way, his insides were ugly.
Whether figuratively or literally.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely symbolism there, for sure. I mean, I think that's probably why it's in there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Like,
this was not a good guy.
This is not a good guy. This is not a good guy. Yeah. No matter how brilliant of clothing he wore and how he presented himself.
Yeah.
I think that's do you think, this is a side note, do you think people, like, I feel like it was easier during those times to present yourself as a god. Do you think people do that today? I mean,
Oh,
I mean, I think
goodness.
they do in different ways, I
Yeah,
guess.
I don't know that it's an apples to apples comparison, but yeah, that the idea of people wanting to be more important than we are is certainly still present today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and I'm not trying to take a shot at anybody on this, but I mean, like literally, there's a job description anymore that just says I'm an influencer, and you're like, really? Like, that's what you do?
Yeah.
And that's somebody who thinks highly of themselves. My opinion matters, and I influence people. And again, we've created that through social media and through TikTok generation and all these things. But yeah, the idea back then, Herod for sure wanted to be viewed that way, as Herod the Great did, as Herod Antipas did, any of those rulers at that time. Claudius, the Roman emperor at that time. He wanted to be viewed that way. We could start down the Alexander the Great path. I mean,
And even outside of the area, I mean, the Chinese rulers at the time, and
of course,
they all were doing the same thing.
yeah, you can make jokes about if you want to be known as anything the Great, you've got some issues. call me Wesley the Great, and so that's kind of the deal. But yeah, we aspire to that. And again, we could have a fantastic discussion that would span a long time about this whole idea of people who struggle with the idea of wanting to be our own God anyway. And that's some of the worst theology you can end up with. But was it more prevalent back then? I don't know. Like I say, that's the part that'd be hard, because I think we still struggle with it today. We just don't rush right out to call ourselves gods, because I think we have learned some lessons.
Yeah. But I mean, to your point though, I mean, the original sin was, hey, I got this better than God. And we do that. I mean, we all
Still
do
to this
that.
day.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
whether we...
we couch it a little more carefully. We are not as brazen when we say it. But
And the smoke and mirrors are easier to see through now than at the time. To some degree.
Boy, I pray they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really hope they
Yeah.
are.
We can buy purple. It isn't like this color that nobody's ever seen before, so at least we got that going for us, I guess.
Accurate.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, on to the next one. What is the significance of during the days of unleavened bread? What is it, or what is that, and what does it mean?
Yeah. And that's the one because you'd give me a heads up on that one, and I was going to go remind myself of the Jewish feast so I could sound smart. But I know that the Feast of Unleavened Bread is the second of the big feasts in the Jewish calendar, and they had feasts to remind them of things that were important. We kind of do this today with religious stuff, but we just do Easter and Christmas kind of as the big Christian holidays. But they had these feasts, these festivals, to remind them of things that were significant in their past. And you can go back to the Old Testament and see the origin stories for a lot of these. And I guarantee at some point in time I took a test and I knew all these in order. And that's the part that I was going to go look up. I think off the top of my head that Passover, that these start in the spring and they kind of work through the agricultural seasons. Passover I know is first, and then the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. And on the second day of the Feast of the Unleavened Bread starts the Feast of the First Fruits. They kind of overlap. And then I'm not sure that I remember. I'm pretty sure it's the Feast of Pentecost, the Feast of Weeks, they called it. And then I think it's the Feast of Trumpets. And then I think it's the Feast of Atonement, which Jewish people still celebrate today, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And then the Feast of Tabernacles or Tents. And that one ends in the fall. So that's kind of that festival season that you have. Check me if I'm wrong on that, because I could be. But I was going to go confirm, so I sounded smarter. But in that, the Feast of Unleavened Bread makes a lot of sense. We know what it is. It's remembering the Exodus from Egypt, and hey, you got to go so quick, you don't have time to bake with yeast and have your bread rise. And it followed Passover, which again was the whole idea of spreading the blood on your doorpost and you don't have the plagues. And so all those things had huge significance to them. None of those things are things that we have to observe today, in the New Testament. But again, to remember history and to remember the importance for those people who made up the early Jewish worship, before the Christian church came along and kind of, changed the way people worship. But whether that's, good or bad is a topic for another discussion. But again, it was a huge deal back in the day, back then. And as I mentioned just in the sermon, it would have been really poor form to execute Peter during the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. Because what you're saying is we remember how God was at work to deliver his people. And here's Peter, who is recognized as the leader of his people in the new church, and you're going to kill him. that would have looked really, really bad.
Yeah.
And I think that's 100% the reason Herod didn't do it. It wasn't because Herod was waffling, oh, should I kill him, should I not? He's already killed James. He wants to kill Peter. He's just going to wait, I think. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is, I was going to look it up, but I didn't. But I mean, we did the family service on the Passover, which we talked about this in the Mid-Brenton. And I think that was last fall sometime. But I can't remember if it was September or October. I can't.
But I remember you doing it, and I remember you handled it really, really well.
Yeah, and we went through that. But I do think this is a good one to review yourself. I mean, we try to answer the questions, but in the Old Testament, there are a lot of things that point to Jesus, but this story so clearly points to Jesus. So if you want to read it. Really, the easy read starts at Exodus 7, which goes through the plagues. Yeah. And then in Exodus 11, if you want to cut to the chase, is the final plague, the plague of the firstborn and the actual Passover portion. Mm-hmm. But it leads immediately into Exodus 12, which talks about the Feast of Unleavened Bread and their lack of preparedness. It also has some cool symbolism of ridding yourself of sin, of just getting it out of your life, getting it out of your household. So it's actually a pretty good read if you want to read through that.
I think it's super helpful, and I think that's a great suggestion, and thanks for pointing folks to that. And again, it's not that you have to remember every nuance, every jot and tittle of what they did, but why were they doing them, Mm-hmm. And that to me is there's significance with the first fruits feast starting during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because truly that's the whole idea. Jesus comes as God's first fruits, the best for us. We are then supposed to return our first fruits, our best, to him. He was born so that we can be reborn. There's these pictures that you get out of God's plan for all eternity, not just this week that you're remembering that. And this to me is, I see it probably more in the ordinances we observe in the church now, which again don't have, well, you can only do them this number of times, whatever, baptism, communion. But I've said this so many times, with communion, the whole idea is remembering God's sacrifice, remembering what Christ did for us on the cross. And I wish I could honestly say, well, I don't need a reminder of that. I remember that all the time. Oh, no, sadly. Mm-hmm. Every time I take it, I'm like, crud. Yeah. I shouldn't have veered so far away from that. But we do. And so for the Jewish people, they had festival weeks that literally were like, hey, stop and remember this thing. And again, like I say, we do that. We try to do that really, really well, even here at Orchards. But I think the Western church tries to do that pretty well at Easter and Christmas. But those are kind of the only times, I hate to say, that we go, this is really a big deal. Remember this.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm always honestly thankful for birthdays. And I know as people get older, they get less. But like, man, like one day to appreciate the people in your life. Yeah. Like we often don't even do that well. Yeah. And we see them.
Yes.
And so I think these kind of ritualistic things
are fair but sad illustration.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but I think the Exodus of the Israelites is a fairly easy read. Yeah, and it's linear. Mm-hmm. It makes sense, and so there you go, some homework for you. And I think the pieces will start to fit for you.
Yeah, but like I say, it's just significantly so important as part of the overall journey, as we mentioned earlier. Each of those steps mattered. So yeah.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Well, let's look to next week.
There you go.
Yes, let's do it. As I look at the time left on here, we're not going for any more records today. We've got record questions.
Thank you so much, folks, for submitting your questions. Yeah. That's a blessing to us. We love to interact with those.
There's I used to play Pod Racer on the N64. And that weird, like from the first episode of Star Wars, that weird flying bug thing that was like. But anyways, if you beat the record, he was like, "That's a new lap record." Anyway, it's a new podcast record.
Now that's stuck in my head. That will come back, I guarantee it.
Completely pointless reference. All right, so next week, our worship pastor Brenton.
I was wondering if you were searching for an adjective there.
Yeah, I was kind of. I was going to go a different direction, and I was like,
"You just really."
It's just easier to tease somebody when they're there. You know. Yeah. So, anyways, our worship pastor Brenton is going to be preaching, and he will actually be bringing us through Acts 13, 1 through 12. This will be a brand new series. So, I mean, we're still in Acts, still all the overarching Acts, but breaking it up into bite-sized pieces. And there's a logical break here where we kind of begin Paul's ministry.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. And the new series is going to be called Anchored. We're going to be kind of seeing the theme over the next few weeks that Paul, despite his trials and his pasts, and kind of just the way that he's bent, will be anchored in the gospel, anchored in who Jesus was and who he said he was, and the good news that he has. And then the clear application for us as we go through this series. So hopefully I got that.
Yeah, that was the idea of where that next segment's going, and like you said, I referenced it in the sermon. This is a pretty clear transition into Paul's ministry, and again, I think a lot of people have Paul kind of as a hero of the faith, and so to see him putting boots on the ground and studying through the Acts is going to be really fun, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and then when we get to the point where his guardian angel needs to come out, we'll be revisiting.
Well, it's funny as you mentioned that, because I mean, it'll happen literally almost every week. Oh wow, Paul really needs some help there.
Yeah. Oh, we got it. Sweet. There's an extra player on that field. Anyway, we've enjoyed this time. That's all the time we have for this week. If you've enjoyed this week's midpoint, please like and follow and share it with all your best friends. If you have questions or any thoughts you'd like to send in the show, you can email or text OCCpodcast@lewistonocc.org or use the Dropbox outside of the worship center to drop questions. That's an easy way to do it. We even have the papers there ready for you. And
as folks have done for us over the last couple of weeks, they just come up and tell us, hey, here's a question.
Yeah, and we try to get those. Yeah.
Trying to get those down too.
And if you're the pastor and you're preaching, just say it in the sermon.
I really wanted to get to that
one. All of those methods work. Please don't shout in the middle of service. That right is reserved for the person on stage only. But and to that. Please do join us for services 9 and 10:30 on Sunday mornings. And for all of those of you that work weekends or love to get into our beautiful area on the weekends, please join us on Monday night, where we do the same service for all of you that can't make it on Sundays. We want you to be part of this church body. We hope to see you all very soon. It is a delight when the body is together. May we not neglect meeting. Thanks for staying connected throughout the week as well. You are so loved here at OCC.
Amen. God bless you guys.